You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code Diehards, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, on Twitter at Justin Lonero, along with my co-host, Bob Harris, at Football Diehard on Twitter. Our executive producer, Kyle Dvorchak, at FF Kyle the Kid, is on the line tonight. Mr. Harris, what's going on?
Not much. I mean, there's a football game on as we record these things, or a quasi-football game, or kind of a football game. The Hall of Fame game on, the Bears and Ravens, getting our first taste of NFL action for the year, at least with guys in uniforms trying to run some plays.
What do you have going on, or what don't you have going on right now? I mean, you're ingrained in everything. Obviously, things are heating up. I know that just about all the magazines are on the shelf for Football Diehards.
Those are all on the shelves, which means we're coming up on the August update, which is basically the online component, the first part of the premium service for the year. We run throughout the season, but the August update is something we do, and it's for something that magazine subscribers get for free. So they can, we don't want the magazine to be just a snapshot in time. I mean, to a degree it has to be, but we extend it by giving you website access if you bought a magazine. Or if you didn't, you can get on the site and still get access. So that goes live Tuesday, August 7th. And right now I am preparing for that with all my heart and soul. And playing best ball, because that's the thing to do right now.
Good. Kyle, what's going on, man?
Not much. I live 2 highway exits down from the Hall of Fame, so traffic is great, and it makes my drives so much better.
I bet. Well, it's not that big of a place. I mean, I'm looking, it's kind of like a glorified high school, right?
I believe Maslin High School, one of the high schools, it's either Maslin or McKinley. It's a nice stadium because they just redid it, but size-wise, you're totally right. It is like high school teams play there. Like, I played there in 8th grade. Well, I didn't play. I'm bad. I'm small and bad. I stood on the field in 8th grade.
It's not a big town, though, right?
No, not really. I mean, like,
right.
This is the thing. This is the thing.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame. It's a big deal.
It's our only big deal. But speaking of big deals, I think we can get into camp buzz that we've got going on.
Sure.
The dry summer months are finally starting to get, finally hitting this oasis of fantasy news. And I've got a few camp nuggets. We'll touch on these throughout the next few weeks leading up into the season. First, I want to start off Chris Godwin making plays throughout Buccaneers camp. Bob, what is your take on this?
Look, he kind of flashed late last year, so there's something to build on. Again, all the stuff that we hear, the camp buzz kind of things, are things that I think you need to take in context and look at the big picture. Don't look at anything, I always talk about it on the show, don't look through the drinking straw. Mm-hmm. But with Godwin, there's something to hang this on. We heard Todd Monken earlier in the offseason talk a lot about him, saying he's earned a playing time starting role. Look, they're in 3 receiver sets a heck of a lot of the time, like 62% of the time. Adam Humphries runs out of the slot a lot, but maybe we'll see less of him. Godwin's a guy to watch. I don't know if it's a this year thing, but he's definitely a player on the rise, and he's one of the guys that I want to get eyes on when the exhibition play starts, and I think we'll see a little bit of him even early on. So yeah, I like what he is, like what he does, like what the coaches are saying. Ready to see if he can build on that.
He's got good size. He's a good route runner. And in Deshaun Jackson's absence, he, like you said, Bob, he performed well down the stretch, particularly against the Saints. He went over 100 yards. Small sample on Godwin. He's 22. And we know Tampa Bay. It's an offense that I think we're all dying to see flourish on, in the ground game with Ronald Jones and what he has to offer, and obviously Mike Evans and Adam Humphries was second the team in receptions last year with 61.
Humphries has had like about 80 targets a year over the last couple of years, maybe 70, something like that. I've got to pull the number up. But I mean, the third receiver there has been pretty heavily targeted. Like I said, they're in 11 formation a fair amount of the time. So I think that's good news. The best news is I've actually had Chris Godwin on my Sirius show, and guys who have been on my Sirius show tend to fare very well in the NFL, according to Stephon Diggs. And Cortland Sutton fans, take heart.
Moving on to another NFC South receiver, Traquan Smith, New Orleans Saints, is setting himself apart from the other options for the second receiver across from Michael Thomas. Justin, go ahead. What do you think is his ceiling as a rookie receiver in the first year in the league?
Oh, it's a Drew Brees offense, but it's a Drew Brees offense that we're not really accustomed to seeing at this point. I mean, he still threw the ball over 530 times last year, so it's Drew Brees, but it's an older Drew Brees, and they were dependent, gentlemen, on a stellar ground game with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. I think it's interesting that they went out and grabbed Traquan Smith out of UCF. I think a lot of this is contingent on, what is Cameron Meredith all about?
His health, right.
His health, which has been an issue. Ted Ginn is there. Michael Thomas, I think, is a bona fide stud in the league. There's a clear rapport with Drew Brees. I think he's a 90 reception receiver. Look, rookie wide receivers, I think they tend to struggle. I think it helps him, though, that he's on a Drew Brees offense. So I think, he's going to be interesting to watch. Smith will be interesting to watch. 6'2", he's a larger wide receiver. Is there enough scraps to go around? I think he's got a top 5 ceiling in terms of rookies, obviously. There are a couple other rookies I like, but I think Smith is right up at the top. And at the end of these redrafts, I think he's a guy you can go out and get, or you'll probably be able to get him on the waiver wire.
Yeah, he's a waiver wire watch list guy for me. But, I mean, in terms of dynasty, yeah, he's a guy you definitely want to watch. The concern being how long does Drew Brees play, over looking at the long term. But I think right now he is a rookie who is flashing, a rookie who is smart enough to get on his quarterback's good side. He's working hard with Drew Brees and making some plays and trying to establish that rapport. So that's all great. I wouldn't get too enthusiastic in redraft. And I'm probably not in best ball just yet. Maybe need to see a little more before I'm there. But the early reporting definitely positive. And Justin mentioned the big body. I like that. I like the 6'2", 210. I want to see where Cam Meredith's at as well. One of the reasons the Bears said they didn't match the Saints offer was because they did not, they had concerns about the knee. Mm-hmm. I think the fact that Meredith didn't start the camp on PUP is a pretty good sign. So, so let's let this play out a little bit. Get Traquan Smith on your radar and start monitoring his progress as we will be doing throughout the month.
All right, Bob. The bad news of training camp has already begun. The bad news began probably with Hunter Henry, but moving on to more bad news. Doug Baldwin, looking to miss most of the preseason, if not the entire preseason. He's a veteran. He's coming up on his age 30 season. He's been with Seattle for a number of years now. I don't think he necessarily needs that preseason to, build a rapport with Russell Wilson or whatever. But do you think this leads to at least a slow start for him?
I think it leads to value for me. And I'm not going to get too worried about a slow start, but I want his price to go down. And I think, the average fantasy manager hears bad news and they react to it immediately. And if it's ongoing over the course of a month, they're going to hear a constant drumbeat that, there is no Doug Baldwin. And I'm willing to run into that and take advantage of that if his ADP starts dropping. You're right. It doesn't concern me in terms of chemistry. It also doesn't concern me in terms of who else. I mean, Tyler Lockett, sure, we have some high hopes for him. But beyond that, we don't have a lot of high hopes for anyone. And seriously, I don't know that we should. Baldwin is first and foremost. Maybe Russell Wilson leads the league and batted back to himself and making big plays off those. He is that guy, right? So, but no, I'm not. Look, if there's a slow start, I'm not drafting Le'Veon Bell because he's going to have a slow start. I'm still drafting the hell out of him. I'm going to do the same with Doug Baldwin, especially if that price drops. Don't be afraid to jump in. Just, on the knee itself, the fact that we saw him the first day that it started being widely reported in his gear on the field, albeit with the electronic stimulators on, just the fact that they don't have him tucked away, stashed in the training room and visible to the world gives me a little bit of comfort, right? So I'm going to play this like I'm looking for value here.
Justin, let me give you a question, because since I've written the show sheet, the notes we work off for the podcast, two receivers have been cut from their respective teams. Which one do you think has a bigger impact on the players around them? Jordan Matthews departing from New England or Brandon LaFell departing from Cincinnati?
Well, LaFell is an older guy. I mean, he's been steady at moments, but it's Jordan Matthews is hurt. I thought that Jordan Matthews is going to come in.
He's on IR.
Yeah.
And they signed Derrick Decker today, so.
They'll make do. Historically, Eric Decker's been fine in the slot, and I thought
not the last two histories.
No,
last 2 years.
No.
But there is something there, right? You go back. Who drafted him? It was the Josh McDaniels, Denver Broncos, and there was three 1,000-yard seasons in the 4 prior to the last
That's
2.
True. That's true.
And he is a capable big slot guy, but I think that's the other, he's the opposite of Baldwin. The thundering crowd of people clamoring to draft him because he's the shiny new object. I'm going to be laying off. I'm here. Phil Dorsett is looking very good and taking advantage of additional reps in practice. He's been there a year, maybe even working out of the slot some. So I think for me, I'm not looking to cash in on Edelman's absence so much other than by drafting Julian Edelman much later than I would otherwise have to draft him. For brave souls who think that Eric Decker might be, I know you're the Patriots guy. So, we both know what the key is here. It's earning Tom Brady's trust. And certainly Eric Decker is a guy that looks like he has that capability, right? The be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be guy. Yeah. And so there's some cachet there, but I need to see some of it first. Is it someone you would chase right now, or do you need to wait and see too?
As far as Decker's concerned?
Decker.
He's a veteran, right? And like you said, I like the tidbit as far as coming from Denver, but he is older, and if you can't get on the same page as Tom Brady, this means squat. We're hearing a lot of Chris Hogan buzz. His ADP is shooting up, and what is Malcolm Mitchell? We don't know. He's still dinged. So
still hurt. Kenny Britt still hurt.
It's ambiguous. You guys know I like to say ambiguous. I was very, very, very optimistic on Jordan Matthews based on what he did in Philadelphia. He's still young. He's a big body slot guy. But like you say, Bob, and you pound that drum every single week. As far as Julian Edelman is going to come back, he's not dinged. He was just foolish, so he's suspended. And his value has just, you're getting Julian Edelman, who's caught 90 balls in a Patriots offense, who has that rapport with Tom Brady, at a discount. So it is discouraging being a Patriots fan. Because I was optimistic about Jordan Matthews. So it's, but in terms of Brandon LaFell, he's Brandon LaFell. He's a Jag, just another guy and irrelevant in fantasy circles.
His mom is very upset. She listens to this pod and she's going to come after you on Twitter. But beyond that, it's like watch the John Ross stock shoot immediately up, right? And that's,
right.
That's what to me, that's going to be the impact for the guys around him. I think there are other guys there that can handle that number 2 role. Maybe one of them is John Ross, but values are going to be changed. And it seems like Ross is the guy who's going to get more expensive because of this.
Yeah, we're anticipating seeing John Ross. Like you said, you can't teach speed, and Ross is an absolute burner. So opportunity is here for certain. They did draft Odin Tate, 7 out of Florida State. 6'5", big body.
Red zone guy.
Yeah, red zone guy. Yeah.
Maybe Tyler Eifert gets hurt. That never happens.
That never happens. But they do have Tyler Croft.
Right, a plug and play.
Yep. Tyler Croft had 7 touchdowns last season.
Look, if I'm drafting Eifert in best balls, and I am, the price is crazy good. Tyler Croft, get Eifert in the 12th round, get Croft in the 18th or 19th round of NFL 10. Do the same thing with Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis too, by the way.
Oh, I love Jordan Reed. Kyle, I know we're on a time crunch, and you just asked me a quick question. Bob and I just kept.
We apologize.
Moving along, right? We're doing the AFC South tonight, Kyle.
Yes, sir, we are, and our first stop will be in Jacksonville. And the biggest fantasy asset they have is by far and away Leonard Fournette. Bob, do you think he can improve as a pass catcher? Because that was really the one facet of his game that was lacking in terms of, reaching a potential ceiling. So do you think he improves as a pass catcher? Does he have any chance of being a top 5 back? Or do we see more of what we saw last year?
I think we see more of what we saw last year. But here's the other part of his game that wasn't great that maybe we see more of, and that's breakaway runs. Right? We think, all we remember the 2 long runs, the 75-yarder late in the year, and he had a 90-yarder. But he only had 4 carries of over 90 yards all season long. He comes in trimmed down. My serious co-host Mike Dempsey is there on the practice field every day covering the Jaguars. He says he does look very fast, very explosive. And if he has a few catches, that would be great. But I think if he just added more explosive plays, some of those big breakaway runs or, at least runs, some big chunk plays, that would be very helpful as well. Obviously not as big as catches are in PPR. I think he's capable of that. I just don't know how much the Jags want to throw the ball, period. Right? They want to run the ball. The offensive line is built for that, bringing in Andrew Norwell and, as part of that. So yeah, I think he can be better. I'm liking him more as we're getting closer to the season, but I don't know that the pickup's going to be as a receiver.
he did. There was not a large sample size of Leonard Fournette in the passing game at LSU. It's just not something that they
don't ask him to do, right? Yeah.
But he played. Now Leonard Fournette has a long history of injuries. I think, he's been fully healthy since high school, which is a concern. He's obviously a talent, 6 feet, 220, and he was involved in the passing game last season, Kyle. Still only playing 13 games, but still had over 300 touches. He's a volume back. I think Bob's right. I mean, this team, their identity is playing. They have one of the best young defenses in the NFL. Fantastic to watch, and they're going to run the football. And Blake Bortles threw the ball over 520 times, so he's going to sling the ball to that crowded cast of pass-catching weapons, Kyle. But I like Leonard Fournette as a top 10 NFL receiver. NFL running back any way you cut it, and I'm going to stick him in the same scope as Melvin Gordon, Kareem Hunt, in that range there.
Yep.
Bob, Justin brought up the unbelievably crowded receiving core. No player really separating themselves from the rest. Who are you taking here?
Dante Moncrief all day long because the ADP is crazy good. Right now, he's the starter opposite Marquise Lee. He is the closest thing on the roster. DJ Chark, I'll take that back. He and DJ Chark, the closest things, the rookie they just drafted this year, the closest thing to an Allen Robinson type receiver. The injury history for Moncrief is what's been daunting, but he's in there in a 1-year, fully guaranteed, prove-it deal, $9 million. He's going to be on the field, going to get opportunities. He's made some plays early in camp. Also dinged his knee early in camp, so he's missed a couple days here. But I think in general, just given the price, look, I could draft Marquise Lee. I don't have a problem with that. I think beyond that, Keelan Cole is I don't know that the playing time or the targets are going to be consistent enough. And Dede Westbrook right now is going to be lucky if he holds on to that receiver 4 spot. They don't, he needs to show them something in terms of his work habits. And it wouldn't be surprising if DJ Chark, cut into that role or even past him at some point here shortly.
They do. I mean, they have talent. When you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receivers and you look at Marquise Lee, I think that he had polish come out of USC. Robert Woods-esque, I think we know what Marquise Lee is. And he was relatively steady. And Keelan Cole was no slouch either. Close to 750 receiving yards, but out is Allen Hurns, who they threw a bunch of money at. You mentioned Dante Moncrief, kind of underachieved in Indianapolis. I thought we had higher expectations, and now he's in an even more crowded spot. But like you also mentioned DJ Chark, 6'4", LSU kid. It's crowded, but again, the reality of this, and also Austin's Seferian-Jenkins is going to take over the Mercedes Lewis role. I think he's going to have an impact in the red zone. He's cleaned himself up from a sobriety standpoint, from what I gather. And Austin Seferian-Jenkins was
so he takes the Mercedes Lewis role. He'll have a 3-touchdown game and otherwise block a lot.
Yeah, he'll block a lot. But I mean, look, the Bucs drafted Austin Seferian-Jenkins out of Washington early a few years ago. Had some off the field concerns, but I think he's a damn good tight end. But the reality of the situation is, this team wants to run the football. I think that's going to be a large part of their identity. And also, gentlemen, TJ Yeldon is going to be a running back that's going to have 40 to 50 catches. I think that's just the way it is. And if something happens to Leonard Fournette, which is very likely for a game or so, TJ Yeldon can be thrusted into that starting role. So it's, Kyle, there are 5 capable pass catchers in this offense. It might be one of these situations where you fade it. For me, dollar for dollar, in terms of comfort, I think it's Marquise Lee, but he's not going to. None of these guys are going to absolutely knock our socks off.
Top target guy would be the safe bet, and he's kind of proven he's solid over the middle. Not going to tear the top off things, but still a very kind of fits what they want to do in the passing game as a chain mover as well. So I'm with you there, and playing with Blake Bortles somehow quietly has had top 12 seasons, 2 years of the last 3. Last year it was 13. I think he's been as high as 4. It was 9 and then 13. So, he's a spiked player. Maybe not a bad best ball play because he turns up some weeks and doesn't turn up others, but better than we think is what Blake Bortles is, apparently, in fantasy.
Quarterback 22 in MFL 10s over the past month. Justin, are you on board with that ADP at least? Not that you love Blake Bortles or anything, but the value's there, right?
Yeah, the value's there. And look, Blake Bortles was a kid that was drafted. We all had huge expectations for him. He's not Joe Montana. We all know that he does not need to be. We talk about how deep the quarterback position is in fantasy circles. I'm fine, and there's going to be weeks where we're going to talk about Blake Bortles during the regular season and absolutely love him, whether we play him naked or we pair him up with a Marquise Lee or a Keelan Cole. But I'm fine, and it goes back to what Bob says every week. It's going to be predicated on price, and he's coming at a good price. He's more experienced, and that these things take time. And I'm laughing, guys, because I was going to ask you about how Patrick Mahomes is doing at camp, because we know it's going to be a learning curve. Blake Bortles is, I would hope that at this point in time, Blake Bortles is comfortable in the NFL. It's his team, but, and he did throw the ball 520 times last year. But yeah, back to your original question, Kyle, I'm completely fine with taking Blake Bortles, and it's basically predicated on his cost. Not that I'm in love with him by any means.
Moving on to Tennessee, Bob, how much, if any, how much revitalization do you think we see of this offense with a new head coach in town? And do you think we see a significant departure from exotic Smashmouth, or is there still a transition period?
No, I think we'll see a significant departure. You bring in Matt LaFleur, a guy who's worked with both Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. That's why he's there, right? Because they want some of that to rub off on them. Mm-hmm. And I think it seems like likely that it will be quite an evolution. The concern with some of that is sometimes that it takes a year or so for these offenses to come together. Mm-hmm. Other times in like Los Angeles, apparently it does not under Sean McVay. So I'm interested, intrigued. But I'm not going to get too far in front of my skis on it. I do think it's a nice change. It's obviously a change that was needed. In my mind, we didn't see Marcus Mariota make the progression that they expected. Maybe we'll see that happen with this new offense, and maybe with some additional help on the outside. I'm sure we'll be talking about Corey Davis and what the expectations are for him. But the addition of Dion Lewis maybe helps with that passing attack as well too.
It certainly will. And I am excited about this tenant, and well said, by the way, Bob. People want a piece of what Kyle Shanahan is all about. People want a piece of what Sean McVay is. I think these teams want to evolve, and you have to, quite frankly, if you want to score points. I think the smash mouth routine is borderline historic at this point. That being said, you do have a sound run game in Dion Lewis and Derrick Henry, kind of a yang to a yang. They're certainly different running backs, but it's going to be nice to see a quarterback who Marcus Mariota, in my opinion, I think the Bucs in hindsight are kicking themselves in the pants that they didn't take Mariota over Winston. He is poised. He is cerebral. I think he's everything you want in an athlete, 6'5". He goes through his reads. It's going to be nice to see Marcus Mariota be able to unleash his talent. They have a damn good offensive line. I am intrigued. And like Bob said, I think Corey Davis is going to be a special wide receiver. It'll be nice to see him thrive as well.
Leading into our next question, Bob, are you paying the premium for Corey Davis, or are you still taking the value with Rashard Matthews?
I'm probably more likely to take the value. I'm old and cheap. Everyone knows this. We make no secret of this. And but Davis, and I do think Davis, there's again something to hang your hat on there. In terms of we saw it late last year, right? So and clearly drafted to be that guy. So yeah, I'm just not sure that I'd like to see a little something before I pay for it. I think Rashard Matthews, crazy value right now, still going to have a role in the offense. I do think it's going to diminish some if Davis turns into what we expect. But yeah, I'm probably I'm going to have a hell of a lot more shares of Matthews than I am Davis this year.
He is on the pup. Rashard Matthews is
right
on the
now,
pup.
yeah.
And I think that's a little concerning, but they can obviously activate him whenever they deem necessary. It's just not going to happen right now. And he already
has established the chemistry right with Mariota.
Yep,
so
yep,
that's line. Again less of a concern there.
Yep. And out goes Eric Decker. So and your boy Delaney Walker, who's the biggest. Said he's the most ripped NFL player you've seen.
He is huge.
So I think the jury's still out on Corey Davis. Rapport is something in nonverbal communication. We talk about these things all the time. So as far as Rashard Matthews, it's already built in with Marcus Mariota, and you're certainly getting him at the value difference between Corey Davis, people gravitate towards sexy. Sexy is Corey Davis at this point in time. Rashard Matthews is going to be that steady Eddie that we like.
Yep.
All right, Bob, where does Delanie Walker, the most ripped player in the NFL, rank amongst your tight ends?
He's right in that now, right in tier 2, right? Well, I guess I could probably clarify that a little bit and just say maybe there's 4 tiers of that top tier, because maybe Zach Ertz is on a tier by itself. He's kind of, it's Gronk and Kelsey, then the Ertz tier, then that next tier. However you view it, I think Walker is a safe play in there. That Olsen, Walker, Jimmy Graham, Kyle Rudolph, Evan Ingram, kind of in that group, and then there's a fall off. So if you want to piece that in, interestingly, the Titans just paid him a hell of a lot of money to stick around for another 2 years. So sorry, Jonnu Smith fans in Dynasty. Delanie Walker's not going away, and I think he's a solid value where he's currently going into drafts.
No, there's no question about it. You talk about rapport. He has a rapport with Marcus Mariota, and I think that the price is just beautiful. And you hear about Trey Burton. I actually drafted him the other night in a football guys draft, and I was hesitant. There was George Kittle, there was Trey Burton. I'm like, all right, Trey Burton. Is Trey Burton going to be Travis Kelce and the Bears off? I'm kind of hesitant, but when you look at Delanie Walker, I think you know where you're getting in Delanie Walker. And similar, I'm going to put him in that Kyle Rudolph scope. I might grab Jordan Reed because I think Reed has the higher ceiling, but I'm comfortable with the Rudolphs, and I'm certainly comfortable with Delanie Walker.
I think you get Reed a little later, and maybe you're a little more keen on Rudolph in standard leagues or touchdown-only leagues,
right,
and Walker more in a PPR league. But they're all in that same range. And by the way, on Burton, he is going to play the Travis Kelce role. It's just, can he play
exactly.
Can he succeed? So that's the concern there.
Exactly.
All right, Bob, I know we've talked about this before, so I'll let you keep it brief. Take your best value right now, Dion Lewis or Derrick Henry?
I'll go with Dion Lewis. I think he's the cheaper, the cheaper play right now. It seems like Henry's climbing all of a sudden. Maybe it's that photo that's roaming around the interwebs that makes him look like Henry's kindergarten age child. You see that a lot with Derrick Henry. He's a very large man. You might not be aware of this. No. I like the value. Obviously, in a PPR, it's added to a little bit, but we all saw it last year, probably Justin more than most of us watching the Patriots every single minute of his life. Dion Lewis can run between the tackles, kids. They paid him $20 million. They didn't just, he's not there by accident. The Vrabel connection to New England and John Robinson, the GM as well. So, I think I like, if I had to pick one right now, it's going to be Lewis because the price is right, and I think the role could be right as well.
Touche, partner. And look, Dion Lewis is going to be involved in the passing game, and like you said, he can run between the tackles. The biggest thing for Dion Lewis has been health historically, but when he is on the field, and I saw this a lot in New England, he is a difference maker, and you got to keep an eye on Dion Lewis. He's special. He hides. He's not a guy 5'8", but he's low center of gravity. And you guys are gonna laugh, but there's been plays when I've seen Dion Lewis cut, and he has been resembled Barry Sanders on a small level. Now, obviously, Derrick Henry's not gonna be able to hide like Dion Lewis. And I think his role at 24 years old is solidified. He's gonna be a bruiser, and he's probably gonna have close to 200 carries, but they're both going to be involved, and it's going to be a hell of an offense to watch.
All right, I think that can bring us to Indianapolis, and I pushed this news on to Indianapolis, the training camp buzz we had earlier, but Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton look to have not skipped a beat at all. I know it's only training camp, but how highly are you viewing T.Y. Hilton now that we're getting more glimpses of Andrew Luck, and is there anyone outside of Luck that you're taking? Bob, go ahead.
More highly? Look, it is kind of appealing. I guess what you're looking for is, more boom, less bust, right? And that's been the issue for T.Y. Hilton. But go look at his career numbers. He has been sneaky good, right? I think he's a guy that if I was sure, and I think we talked about this before. I was not necessarily unsold on the notion that if there was no Luck, Jacoby Brissett wouldn't improve with a full year as a starter under his belt after showing up in the middle of nowhere. out of the middle of nowhere and having to learn the offense on the fly. Sure, there were going to be chemistry issues last year. Makes perfect sense. But you look like the 2013 season for Hilton, 2014 season, 2015, 2016, that 1,448 yard season, 6 TDs. I think he's a damn solid play, and I think the price is going to rise, and that's going to make it a little bit problematic. But in general, the more luck I see, the more I will like Hilton, and we're going to see a lot of luck, right? So, going to play more than usual in the preseason to try and get him back up to speed. So we'll have a pretty good understanding of where he's at.
We're not going to get that T.Y. Hilton discount at this point in time. I got him round 4, Bob, in the draft book draft. That's just not going to happen anymore. I think T.Y. Hilton can have a top 5 ceiling, and he has that clear rapport with Andrew Luck. He's been kind of a victim of circumstance with having to play with quarterback. I think his range we've talked about can be up and down, but he is tonight. He's a top 12 or 13 wide receiver in any format. And T.Y. Hilton, despite being as small as he is, he stays on the field, and we love that. I think that's something we overlook. I mean, there's only a handful of quote-unquote elite wide receivers in the NFL that play 16 games every year, and Golden Tate, Landry's been one of those guys, DT, and Hilton is right in that range despite being smaller than all the other names I mentioned.
Justin, do you see anyone outside of T.Y. Hilton in terms of receivers, or maybe even Eric Ebron as the second tight end providing value or paying back on their extremely low ADPs, or will it be concentrated with T.Y. Hilton and Jack Doyle?
Not really. I mean, you talk about Ryan Grant, then the rookie Dion Kane, who they drafted round 6 out of Clemson, 6'2". Jack Doyle had 80 receptions last year, gentlemen. Low A-dot guy, 4 touchdowns, but in PPR formats, 80 receptions is 80 receptions. I think the addition of Eric Ebron is going to cloud things up from that standpoint. But Eric Ebron performed moderately well in a Detroit Lions pass-happy offense. I think they're going to cut from each other's touches, which is not good from a fantasy angle. So, but outside of T.Y. Hilton, from a wide receiver standpoint, no interest. Obviously, they lost Dante Moncrief, so that's going to open up some targets, and Ebron could slide and take Moncrief's targets. But it's going to be Hilton, and it's going to be probably Jack Doyle at a discount, and it's really going to be I think at this point in time, not a great offense by any stretch.
Bob, are you targeting any of these ancillary pieces, or are you just taking the names we've actually heard of?
They're flyer guys. I mean, that's Dion Kane. It was, Dynasty, a different story, but in redraft right now and in best ball, I mean, I'm drafting the hell out of Jordan Wilkins in the 17th round. I'm drafting like crazy. And Nyheim Hines, I think, is a pretty good value still. I think maybe 12th round or so seems like his role. But there's nothing you want to bank on. None of these are what I would consider safe plays outside of Hilton. And even at the tight end, I'm not sure I feel really comfortable. Have heard from people talking about maybe Jack Doyle takes on more of the Dwayne Allen role because he's a better blocker than Eric Ebron. So, not sure, not as much of the downfield threat with maybe Ebron doing that. And you saw Ebron's finish last year. I mean, he was pretty solid down the stretch for Detroit last year. I know what the reputation is, but he was not that the last month or two of the season. So yeah, I mean, not eagerly, but if I have to.
All right, Justin, who is your pick out of the Marlon Mack, Nyheim Hines, and Jordan Wilkins backfield?
I'm going to go with Marlon Mack. He's going to get the first crack at it. He's got a surgically repaired shoulder. Not great. That offense was terrible. I think he can perform well in the passing game. I think that Mack could shock a lot of us. I wrote him up in the Diehards draft book, Mag. But I think there's room for concern where they went out and they drafted Jordan Wilkins round 5 out of Ole Miss. They drafted Nyheim Hines, who Mike Clay seems to love, round 4 out of North Carolina State. Why did they do that? Are they convinced that Marlon Mack is the guy? And I'm not sure that they are. If they think that they're going to find Frank Gore, seemingly ageless Frank Gore's replacement, I got news for him at this point. I mean, Frank Gore's a tough guy to replicate, and in fact, he's looked great so far at camp. The guy just doesn't age. So it's cloudy. But I think that, any given week, the three names that I mentioned, whether it's Wilkins, Hines, and Marlon Mack, is going to get the first crack at it, and I think you still get them at a discount in fantasy circles. They're going to have decent weeks. But for me tonight, it's Mack.
Totally disagree. But I mean, just because I don't like the price for Mack, I don't disagree that Mack gets first crack, and maybe he's the guy. I just don't like the pricing of that. I like the pricing of the other guys. And once again, for those keeping score at home, Nyheim Hines, another guy who will benefit from his visit on the Football Diehards on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. And boy, talking about a guy that's versatile. He's played wide receiver. He's carried a full workload at running back. He can return kicks. So I think if you want to split the middle, like some of these other backfields we talk about, where Green Bay or, anywhere where you have that kind of committee and there's two guys chopping up Cleveland, two guys chopping up that early down hammer role, and one guy that looks like he's in line for that satellite role, maybe that's the guy to target. And so maybe Hines is it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Andrew Luck can do with a satellite back type like Nyheim Hines. Just imagine if you got like peak Giovanni Bernard type of talent out of Hines, pairing that with a prolific offense run by Andrew Luck. I'm on board with the value there, just like you spelled it out. Moving on to our last team of the AFC South, Houston. What in the world do we expect from Deshaun Watson? One of the best stretches, probably the best stretch of a rookie, the most touchdowns, and I believe 7 starts for a rookie. But that's a small sample, an extremely small sample, in a game of small samples already. Bob, go ahead.
Less. 30-plus points a game. Look, I watched last year. Some of that came against not great defenses, so there's that. But he's an exciting guy. He's mobile. He's willing and able to get the ball down the field, not afraid to take advantage of his weaponry. And the focus obviously on DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller. Will Fuller, 7.1 touchdown every 7.1 targets last year. That's probably not sustainable either. Look, I think I see him going off early in drafts. I'm still a late quarterback drafter, so I'm not going to have a heck of a lot of Deshaun Watson. I've landed him in a couple best balls and gone against, but that's because I'm in a lot of best balls. I can afford to diversify. So. I think in general, it's going to be his price is going to be too rich for my blood. That offensive line still not great there, but man, he's good. He makes the guys around him better. So this is by no means me saying that Deshaun Watson is not a total badass. This is me saying he might struggle to be as badass as last year.
And you have to pay a premium for Deshaun Watson. You have to pay that Carson Wentz premium as well. And there's a lot to like. The future's bright at the position, but in a position that's at a position that's very deep. Why gamble? I mean, he's coming off the knee. I think we have to love Deshaun Watson, given that he's paired up with arguably behind AB, the second best wide receiver in football, and DeAndre Hopkins. Will Fuller's a player we talk about, but health and drops for Will Fuller, it's kind of the same story there, and I'm hesitant to touch him because of his propensity to get hurt. Got somewhat of a ground game, and Lamar Miller was kind of a plotter, and Deontay Foreman's not healthy. So in terms of balance, there might be a little, but to sustain what Deshaun Watson was doing is, I think, impossible. Again, Bob said it. I mean, he's a guy that he's gutsy, he has confidence, and he's very cerebral. And if you remember watching him at Clemson, he gashed Alabama twice. So you got to love that from an NFL quarterback. There were some cynics surrounding Deshaun Watson, but he showed us that he's every bit of it. It was not a fingernail that he broke. It was not a finger. He tore his ACL. He's somewhat of a mobile quarterback, so it'll be interesting to see how he bounces back. But people are still going to take him early. I'll let them have him, and I will move right along and take another quarterback several rounds later.
Bob, I've got an interesting line of statistics I want to get your take on. Last year, DeAndre Hopkins saw 35% of his team's targets. We had not seen a player do that high of a target share for his team since 2012, Brandon Marshall. I mean, players that do that are few and far between, and they don't repeat. Do you see his target share coming down with maybe a full season of Will Fuller if he can stay healthy? And how does that affect where you're drafting him?
It's not affecting where I draft him, but yes, it's possible. I mean, because if you want him, you're not getting him anywhere but where he's going as the wide receiver too. generally in the first round of drafts. So certainly in PPR. So yeah, and look, I think a little bit of regression seems likely. But that's okay. This is a guy, and the thing we like about him is obviously he stole Josh Gordon's quarterback proof card, and or he learned from Andre Johnson, the original quarterback proof quarterback wide receiver. But yeah, I do think that even with a little regression, he's going to be fine. He is a remarkable player. I mean, just and very missed one game I think last year was due to a calf injury, but he wanted to play that game, I can assure you. So he's just been pretty durable. I'm pretty keen on him right now. I think he's a guy that could maybe push. If someone in this league is capable of pushing AB, it's him.
No question about it. He's 6'1". He's not one of these 6'5", 6'4" wide receivers, and I think you can, right after AB for me, it's DeAndre Hopkins. Bob, we've seen this. We're a little older than you, Kyle, but we saw Andre Johnson suffer through some of these kind of bumps and bruises with terrible quarterback play. No longer the case in Houston. I think they got their guy, Deshaun Watson. We can all agree on that. We knew regression was coming after 2015. We had 111 yards reception, and 1,500 receiving yards. He kind of came back down to earth, but then right back in 2017, he's going to have 160 targets. This is a guy. Now, if you're a defensive coordinator, you better watch him. So he's going to see some, crazy coverages, but his release is unbelievable. His route running, he has some of the best hands I've ever seen. Here's DeAndre Hopkins. If you draw him a picture of a wide receiver that you want, it's going to look like DeAndre Hopkins.
So the next receiver, and probably the only one outside for some deep sleepers on the roster, is Will Fuller. Justin, how do you see Will Fuller's season playing out? He's been hyper efficient, but also oft injured. And, if you don't see him performing up to expectation, is there any chance for any sneaky games from Kiki Kute?
I'm gonna wait on Kute. Like I said about Will Fuller, I mean, this guy, he drops quite a few balls. That comes with time. I get it. He's still 24, so I'm not going to throw the towel in on him. But the health is a concern. It's a concern to me. It appears to be one of these players that just can't, whether he's snake bitten or what. But the knee strain, he's had rib fractures. He's just a guy that can't stay healthy, and I don't like that at all. I know he's capable of scoring touchdowns at a high rate, but Will Fuller's a fade to me, and I just think he comes off as he's a fantasy liability. I'll say that. But that being said, depending on what type of coverage DeAndre Hopkins sees week to week, Will Fuller could be the beneficiary of that. Where their tight end situation is kind of ambiguous, as I like to say, and their ground game is going to be the Lamar Miller show early. Not too keen on Fuller. I think it's, if he falls in the right spot, you got to love his touchdown upside. But I'm hesitant to say the least, given all the injuries he's had so far in his young NFL career.
Bob, the tight end depth chart last year for this team was decimated. Do you see any chance for a sleeper tight end, judging on how high people are on Deshaun Watson? This offense, if people are correct in drafting him as highly as they do, has to be good. Does any of that love get spread to the tight end?
I have it on good authority. The tight end position is a sea of mediocrity.
That's right.
And I, according to my other sources, my eyes, that's Houston's adds to the depth of that sea. Look, Ryan Griffin is like the guy who looks like the fit. And I think here's the shame about this. It's Bill O'Brien, a guy who, comes from New England. Mm-hmm. There's been a pretty good emphasis on the tight end there over the course of a number of years, even prior to Gronk. And I think Griffin is a guy that fits the mold, right? And so I'd like to see him do something. It's so hard to count on the tight end there. Some weeks Steven Anderson, who's more of an H-back, is going to spike. They drafted 2 youngsters in Jordan Akins and who was the other one? Jordan Thomas. So, boy, I'm not saying they're 10-foot pole guys, but I wouldn't touch them with Justin's.
Right. And you had, all this buzz about C.J. Fedorowicz. We thought he was going to be the guy. Steven Anderson, you just mentioned, Bob, led tight ends and targets there. It's kind of like Baltimore, where they're just desperate. After Todd Heap was in there, Ben Watson did his thing, but one of these teams that can't get the position right, and it's a fade for me. The position is a fade. It was like we talk about it with quarterbacks to a degree. I mean, if you have 3 quarterbacks, you have none. It's kind of like they're just
There'll all be waiver wire watch list guys, streaming options, cheap DFS plays. I mean, Steven Anderson at one point last year was a DFS darling, right? So, I mean, that can happen again. So I guess that's how I view those guys. Not enthusiastic, but they'll be on the radar, just very low on the radar.
Before we wrapped up tonight, I just wanted to get both of your takes on what's going on with Patrick Mahomes. Like somebody texted me earlier, they're like, Patrick Mahomes is struggling.
I don't agree that he's struggling. He's throwing interceptions. He's a rookie quarterback in his first 2 days of training camp. And as Andy Reid said, he's testing the offense. He's finding his limits. So you keep looking down that drinking straw there, Justin, to make your case for him being a horrible pick. But I'm going to take the bigger picture.
Bob, you've earned the last word. You've earned the last word on the show. Donta Foreman is on the PUP list right now, and this looks like a potentially much more serious PUP list than someone like we talked about Rashard Matthews earlier. How does Lamar Miller not return value? RB26 right now in MFL 10s.
Well, if he doesn't make it back on the field, I mean, that's the only way. And so the thing is, a ruptured Achilles is no joke. And it happened, late November, early December, late November, I guess. So yeah, this is not a good sign. It would not surprise me if he opens the regular season on PUP, which means you'll see him week 9, week 10. And maybe and once he's back though, I would expect something from him. And all indications are at this point he will be back. It's just the timing is the only question. So factor that into your draft accordingly and be watching him this summer. Those of you in redraft leagues, if you're not drafting until right before the season, maybe he comes off the PUP. Maybe he surprises us all, but he's certainly a candidate to miss that first 2 months of the season.
And Bill O'Brien said, last season that they could ease off Lamar Miller. He's an inefficient running back, but in fantasy circles, Kyle, like you said, he's based on volume alone, he comes at a value. And he's going to have 30 receptions, so we like that. But there's no question that the Houston Texans, like Deontay Foreman, he's 22 years old, but torn Achilles, gentlemen, can be career-ending for some. So it's unfortunate because as fans and as people who study the game, it would have been nice to see more Deontay Foreman. I think he's a talent. I watched him in college, and time will tell, but it doesn't seem like something that's going to heal itself anytime soon. So we're going to see a lot of Lamar Miller early.
All right, I think that can bring us to a close for this episode. Make sure to follow us all on Twitter to get your Diehards pod updates. Follow Justin at Justin Lonero, Bob at Football Diehard, and myself at FF Kyle the Kid. Thanks for tuning in.